During the height of spring break in Florida's coastal destinations, Marine police, beach officers, canine handlers, and support units patrol dense crowds of college students, tourists, and scattered locals who converge on the sand to drink, play, games, lounge under the sun, and occasionally push the limits of legal behavior. Their mandate is simple: ensure safety, preserve order, and enforce strict zero-tolerance protocols concerning underage possession and alcohol consumption on the beach. Officers consistently emphasize that the law is not flexible this time of year. One violation can lead to citations, fines, and if repeated, direct transportation to jail. For many of the college attendees, this creates tension, instantly turning what begins as carefree celebration into a confrontation with legal accountability. Officers introduce themselves politely and ask for identification from anyone holding suspicious beverages cups with cloudy contents, open containers, or coolers, all while trying to avoid escalation. The challenge becomes distinguishing accidental possession from deliberate evasion, maintaining professionalism when verbal resistance begins, and deciding when each situation reaches the threshold for arrest. Patrol begins with officers scanning clusters of students, lounging on towels, carrying drinks, and cooling under umbrellas. Upon approaching a group, the officers ask if everyone drinking is 21 or older. The students quickly submit digital IDs, physical cards, or wallet-based documentation. One 19-year-old holding a hard tea initially denies drinking, but is reminded that being on camera means possession alone is enough to trigger citation. The officer calmly explains that the process is straightforward, an online system of fine, and a requirement not to lose paperwork. The officer emphasizes that being seen next to a cup can constitute possession, and lying only makes matters worse. Students nod dump their beverages and receive warnings, learning that only one citation is permitted. A second results in jail transportation. The environment remains friendly, with officers offering practical advice about cups odor detection and how easily they can identify alcohol. Students learning from the encounter seem relieved to avoid arrest. Beach patrol continues across stretches of sand where new games like spike ball are popular. Officers casually engage players curious about the rules, demonstrating the balance between friendly interaction and enforcement. While the beach appears festive, the officers never lose focus. Underage possession remains priority. Another group of 4 players demonstrate spike ball rules, laughing while the officer observes. 3 of them, however, are underage. The officer warns them that walking around the beach puts them at risk. No citation is issued here, only an advisory to remain cautious. The interaction helps reduce fear and encourages cooperation between law enforcement and young adults. Elsewhere on the beach, another unit spots a suspicious man dragging a large cooler with a dolly. They observe him handing out menus with cocktails listed Hennessy Colada Sex on the beach and other mixed alcoholic beverages at $10 a drink. When the officers see a transaction, they intervene. The man claims he saw people selling drinks in Miami and assumed it was allowed. Officers explain that selling alcohol anywhere requires a permit. On the beach, enforcement is even tighter. His cooler contains unlabeled homemade mixtures, dangerous because the ingredients are unknown. The officers seize the alcohol document contents for court and issue a notice to appear. They warn him that failing to attend court leads to a warrant. He appears remorseful, stating he works and boxes competitively. The officers remain firm yet respectful, advising him never to return to the beach to sell drinks. Once confiscated officers' inventory, the cooler's contents, confirming dozens of containers that could endanger unsuspecting buyers, particularly during spring break when crowds are vulnerable. Further down the beach, officers discover a second offense alcohol violator. A young woman claims cloudy water in her cup is just leftover residue, but officers note murkiness and odor consistent with hard seltzer. She becomes emotional, explaining financial burdens, damage to her phone, and the cost of travel. Initially cited the previous night she violated her notice to appear, court procedure dictates she cannot receive another citation. She must now go to jail. The officers explain the distance to booking bond requirements and how deferment prosecution will be jeopardized. The student pleads that Louisiana's rules differ, apologizing repeatedly and expressing frustration about limited kitchen space preventing her from cleaning the cup. The officer remains empathetic yet bound by statute. A secondary unit arrives to transport her and the arrest proceeds. Officers later remarked that nearly all members of the group learned their lesson except her. During another patrol interval, Marine units shift from sand to open water. They identify two young women on an inflatable raft drifting into a strong current. These rafts, designed for pools, become dangerous in channels where water sweeps unsuspecting riders toward the open Gulf. Without life jackets, the girls risk drowning or collision with novice boaters. Officers warn them they could have been pulled miles offshore. The girls reveal they considered renting a pontoon boat but opted for the cheaper pool float. The officer refrains from issuing a ticket given proximity to shore, instead returning them safely to land. He advises that the raft should be discarded or restricted to pools. Each year, drownings and boat accidents claim lives. These students might have become tragic statistics without intervention. While part of the team focuses on underage drinking, another proactive unit distributes BarWatch Kit's small portable test cards that detect substances like Rohypnol. Female tourists from New York receive koozies and learn to test droplets from their drinks. Officers stress situational awareness as reports of drug-facilitated sexual assault rise during peak nightlife periods. Students appreciate the information promising to spread safety advice across their social circles. For officers, this blend of safety education and approachable demeanor is essential. They want spring break visitors to return safely, not become silent victims. A canine officer with his explosive detection partner demonstrates training for students on the sand. The dog is impeccably disciplined, sitting and staring when detecting the planted odor. The handler shares that he misses her when on vacation. She is his closest companion. Visitors pet the dog, admire her professionalism, and applaud the demonstration. These interactions build rapport, reminding citizens that police are guardians, not antagonists. A final encounter involves a young man drinking and dancing enthusiastically. Officers identify him as underage and issue a citation worth over $300. His friends ask for leniency, but the officer explains strict orders, everyone must be ticketed. The student accepts responsibility with good humor, takes photos with officers, and continues enjoying the beach. Officers remark on his positive attitude, showing that compliance can preserve dignity, even when laws are enforced. Together, these sequences portray spring break as a complex ecosystem, carefree leisure, intertwined with legal boundaries, peer culture safety hazards, drug prevention, and maritime risk. Officers must balance empathy with authority, ensuring students enjoy freedom without crossing into danger. Their mission, more than ticket issuance, is to keep thousands of tourists alive, accounted for, and respectful of local law. As the crowds ebb and flow, the recurring themes remain education, prevention, accountability, and the belief that one officer's calm words can prevent tragedy. The season's survival depends not on punishment, but on awareness. As spring break progresses, patterns begin to emerge. Officers witness the same scenarios, repeating across different stretches of beach, young adults assuming rules do not apply to them. Alcohol concealed in reusable cups, coolers packed with seltzers, flavored hard teas, and unlabeled containers that invite suspicion the moment an officer passes by. There is a cultural sense among some visitors that the beach is a lawless arena, a place where the consequences of everyday life are suspended. Yet officers working 10-hour shifts under heat and dehydration risks are tasked with constantly reminding them that the beach is not separate from the law. Their presence is a visual barrier against chaos. Without it, over 2 million seasonal visitors could turn one coastline into a humanitarian crisis. The more officers patrol, the more subtle tactics they encounter. Some students attempt to pass drinks between one another when an officer approaches, believing that possession disappears if the drink simply transfers hands. Others claim not to know who a cup belongs to, despite being physically seated next to it. Officers trained in behavioral cues know how to read hesitation glance patterns and inconsistent statements. They repeat the same educational message through calm, rehearsed language: honesty is better, possession is defined by proximity, and lying expands consequences. Still, the temptation to deflect responsibility is strong for many worried about fines, parental reactions, or university disciplinary action. Occasionally, the pushback is emotional rather than deceptive. The arrested student from Louisiana stands as a cautionary illustration. She expresses fear about costs, frustration about her lost phone, and disbelief that a seemingly harmless mistake warrants jail time. The officer neither raises his voice nor belittles her. Instead, he reminds her that multiple warnings were issued and that one citation is a legal limit. After that, the system requires escalation. Her story spreads through the groups who watched or heard about it, reinforcing officers' message far more effectively than lectures alone. Secondhand caution becomes a social regulator. Beyond alcohol, officers must remain vigilant about environmental hazards often invisible to tourists. Strong tidal currents carve invisible pathways beneath the water, pulling swimmers and floaters far from shore in minutes. Tourists from inland states unfamiliar with coastal hydrodynamics underestimate how quickly they can drift. Busy boat channels surrounded by rental pontoons operated by inexperienced spring breakers form deadly combinations. Without intervention, a simple joyride on a raft can become a search and rescue tragedy. When officers towed the 2 Alabama students back to shore, they gently emphasized how easily they could have been struck by a boat or pulled into a restricted military zone. The students, slightly embarrassed but grateful, admit they did not know the geography or the currents. Education in this moment supersedes punishment. Officers have discretion, a powerful tool, and use it to save lives, not ruin vacations. Patrol philosophy shifts as the day ages. Early afternoon crowds tend to be playful games: volleyball, spike ball, music, sunscreen application, portable speakers, and endless selfies. By late afternoon, alcohol metabolizes into impulsivity. Officers monitor transitions, energy becomes louder, language sharper, bodies less coordinated. Crowds thicken around portable coolers, and peer pressure replaces individual judgment. Officers learn to identify when a fun environment is about to cross into medical risk. To counter potential predatory behavior at nightclubs, the Bar Watch kits become crucial. Female students listen closely, aware of chilling stories circulating on social media. The officers explain that the cards detect common date rape compounds. If the droplet turns dark blue, the drink must be discarded immediately and staff notified. The young tourists, especially those who aspire to careers in hotel management or criminal justice, take interest in the practical legal considerations. They realize, perhaps for the first time, that nightlife requires structured safety planning. Meanwhile, K9 units bring another layer of security. Dogs trained to detect explosives must learn how to operate amid distraction: sand, music vibrations, chemical sunscreen odors, spilled alcohol food packaging, and crowds of people. Their handler points out that explosive residue hides in inconspicuous shapes: lunchboxes, duffel bags, or forgotten coolers. Students are impressed by the dog's ability to sit still, tail stiff, eyes locked on the object once the scent is found. This stillness, the handler says, is communication. Adrenaline, meanwhile, is reserved for playtime tug toys, reward the dog's success, reinforcing the bond between handler and partner. For spectators, it is an adorable gesture. For security protocol, it is life-saving behavior. Officers reflect privately that one of the greatest dangers on spring break is ignorance layered over confidence. Many spring breakers are first-year college students, legally adults, but developmentally inexperienced. They underestimate their vulnerability in crowded, humid environments where heat stroke, dehydration, and intoxication compound rapidly. Marine officers often operate boats under tight time windows, responding to calls for distressed swimmers or disabled vessels. A failure to identify distress early can transform a 10-minute rescue into a fatal recovery hours later. Spring break is statistically the deadliest season on many American beaches. Still, not all interactions are confrontational. Some are joyfully absurd, like the officer invited to judge a stunt for a group of college women. They attempt to stack bodies in a cheer-like human tower, wobbling and laughing as officers cheer them on. It is a moment of levity that dissolves fear and reinforces that law enforcement has humanity. After multiple attempts, the officer awards them a perfect 10, and the group erupts in celebration. These interactions serve dual purposes: softening public anxiety and reminding officers why they joined the service. Laughter becomes a temporary balm against the constant vigilance demanded by their job. But the job demands seriousness again when officers find a young man dancing with a drink in his hand. He tries to maintain composure, but his unsteady balance and slurred speech betray his claim of legal age. His group, noticing the attention, begs for leniency. The officer shakes his head, gently reiterating orders every underage drinker must be cited. Still, the officer admires the student's response. Rather than arguing, the young man laughs, accepts his ticket poses for photos, and encourages others to stay smart. Officers later remarked that if every citation went this smoothly, their job would be significantly easier. Beyond the beach itself lies a broader context. Tourism economies depend on reputation. Fatalities, assaults, violent fights, or viral videos of negligence can damage an entire season's revenue. By enforcing laws consistently, officers protect local residents whose livelihoods depend on tourism. They protect small businesses, bars, restaurants, tour operators from liability associated with drunk clientele. They protect the image of Florida's coastlines, ensuring parents continue to trust the region with their college-aged children year after year. As crowds ebb, officers regroup, share observations, and report logistics. They inventory confiscated goods, fill out paperwork for seized alcohol, summarize behavioral patterns, and communicate with nighttime patrol units about hotspots likely to escalate after sunset. The homemade alcohol seized earlier could have concealed dangerous ingredients, not necessarily malicious, but lacking safety inspection. Officers understand that one illness can lead to lawsuits, hospitalizations, or death. Some officers admit that the hardest part of spring break is not enforcement. It's repeating the same explanation hundreds of times under heat exhaustion. They must smile, politely maintain patience, and deliver legal information clearly, even when their bodies are fatigued. Students frequently ask if alcohol hidden in cups is detectable. Officers grin knowingly. They can smell it instantly. They have trained noses and rely on behavioral context. A cup passed between hands clumsily is often more suspicious than one boldly held. The tone of enforcement changes depending on prior warnings. First-time offenders receive citations with flexible online payment options. Second-time offenders face arrest and jail transportation, something students underestimate. Arrest costs escalate, court appearances, bond fees, travel costs, parental involvement, and potential academic disciplinary hearings. Officers quietly hope their warnings resonate before consequences become life-altering. Late afternoon, shadows elongate across the beach, signaling the transition to night operations. Music thumps from balconies, lights blink from condos, and crowds migrate from the sand to boardwalk bars. Officers sip water wipe, sweat readjust utility belts, and prepare for shift continuation. Their conversations reflect seasoned realism. The night always brings new challenges. Alcohol concealed in water bottles becomes more common. Reports of harassment increase. Medical calls spike. The Marine unit shifts to dock patrol, navigating tight waterways where boat collisions are common among inexperienced renters. Even with all these challenges, officers maintain a practiced calm. Spring break, they joke, ages them faster than any other assignment. Yet beneath humor rests a deep sense of purpose. They have prevented drownings, assaults, intoxication, poisoning, and countless reckless accidents. They have confiscated unknown liquids that could quietly harm hundreds. They have taught thousands of tourists how to protect themselves. Their impact is invisible when successful because disaster prevented leaves no headline. The beach finally quiets as the sun dips into the horizon. Students pack towels and portable speakers, police vehicles retreat from the sand, and officers reflect on the constant cycle of education versus enforcement. For now, the shoreline breathes again, at least until tomorrow, when the crowds return like waves.